We call this Plan Commission meeting to order. This meeting has been given notice in accordance with Section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all members are present except for Chairman Walter and Commissioner Nilles. A motion would be in order to appoint a Chairman Pro Tem.
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry. David Baum.
Second that, President Pro Tem.
A motion has been made and seconded to appoint Trustee Baum as Chairman Pro Tem. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, that'll bring us to item number 3, public input and public appearance. Please be advised per statutes 19.84 parent 2 that information and comments will be received from the public. It is the policy of this municipality that public input be limited to 3 minutes per person with a time extension granted at the discretion of the chairperson. Please be advised there may be limited discussion on the information received, but no action will be taken under public comments. Is there anybody wanting to come forward?
It's on. Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. Good evening. I think cleaning up the zoning codes is a good thing, so I'm all for that, but I just haven't had a chance to go through the zillion pages that are in there and was wondering if there were any potentially unintended consequences that you may want to consider based on the fact that the state apparently is telling us to do this. Is that correct? The state's telling us to do this? Yeah, okay. While I am a pet lover, switching subjects, the enlargement of the Golden Pet building will essentially stuff it onto the site and it'll be looming over the Goldendale Holy Hill house. It's also going to cover up a detention pond that's already there. And it's going to be much bigger than it already is. And you know that I'm not a fan of large warehouses of any description. I did notice that there appears to be no storm calcs provided based on the dates of the different memos, and perhaps that should be actually verified before you make a motion on this. Regarding the Green Bay packaging, that area I was under the impression is subject to a neighborhood meeting and further master planning in relation to what's happening north of that area. That's not correct? That's not correct?
No.
Okay.
Not by my interpretation.
Okay. Well, in another point, we have our village budget coming up soon, and I would be thoroughly against any kind of additional building being added into any TID. We are already having trouble funding certain priority things that we have within fire and police. And we don't, our cow meetings are coming up where we go through all the budget and we go through everything. So I would be very hesitant to have another property off the tax rolls so that we cannot take advantage of any tax revenue because it was shoved into a TID. This location is apparently looking for a partial frontage road. And I'm just saying that perhaps the developers may want to be prepared to pay for some of this themselves. I feel like we do not need any more TIDs. We do not need to grow any more TIDs. We actually need to release some of our TIDs so that we can take the revenue and put it back into the village. So those are my remarks. Thanks.
Anybody else wishing to come forward for public appearance?
Scott Effley, W159 N10514, Old Farm Road, Germantown. Melanie spoke most of the things that I looked at. I did see the frontage road on the drop down, and I know we're preliminary discussions, but frontage roads cost money. They're not free. They're very expensive. So I know we're just in the discussion phase, but I will remind this board that that's how the Richfield IGA started, just discussion, and now we have a big master plan there. So Discussion is fine, but the proposal is troubling because it leaves open language that says, you guys can just move it forward. It's fine. We don't need anything. We don't have any plan in that area. Someone shows me a master plan out in the Holy Hill District for the development we're talking about, I'd like to see it, but it's not out there. We know that. I'm also a new member of the Economic Development Commission, which I think we should start weighing in, and this commission should, this other commission, working with you guys to identify what we're doing for development. And we got a full commission. I'm on there. We got a school board person on there. We should work together to see what it is. It shouldn't all have to be on you. We're willing to help. So we should have some input in what the development going on. Economic development is development. New buildings are development. So I'd ask for the opportunity to have the board review that. We have a good full team of people. In Freistadt, we do have a lot of wetlands, more than I ever thought possible. So I know that we're looking for development, but I don't think we're going to be able to develop a whole heck of a lot if MMSD has a word to say on it. So let's not fill in wetlands. We've done some of that. Let's make sure we're doing the right things. The utility route, the legend didn't say it. Is it a blue line, red line, purple line? I don't even know. It's a line. But I want to know where these utilities are going. I'm also on the Utility Advisory Commission. And I don't know where these utilities are going, and I've not been presented something that shows me the route that we're agreeing on. So, you know, these are things that I'd like to see being on these commissions. I think it's important. I love the capstone idea, that thing with Madison. I think it's great, good idea for the kids. I still want the Community Development Department, our own, to run any kind of neighborhood meetings. It shouldn't be those kids from Madison. Nobody here knows them. They're probably good kids, but I want our planning department to do it. I only have a couple more things. I know you know this, but as of Friday, we have no engineer on staff in this village. We have someone that we've hired on a fee basis to help us out. That's not an engineer in this village. I want an engineer in this village looking out for us and residents and taxpayers. And so I think we got to be careful with having any of these projects just shoved forward. We don't even have an engineer on staff unless someone tells me, and I don't mean some consultant. We're doing a lot of that engineering work. We're going to spend $1 million in consultants pretty soon for engineering if we don't watch out. I want somebody in-house. Thank you.
Anybody else for public hearing and input? As a trustee or as a resident?
I will be trustee Jan Miller, W151 and 10297 Windsong Circle West. So tonight, I wanted to make a comment at the public safety meeting. However, I also wanted to make a comment at the tourism meeting. The meetings were running at the same time. The tourism is over at the library, and the public safety was
You got to
here.
talk, Jeff.
Thank you. Anyway, so that I couldn't make some comments at the public safety. So I think we should not have overlapping meetings. Make sure that all microphones are working and that this is recorded. Thank you very much. One of the things that I will remind you is that we do not have the 2022 audit completed. We are going to be going into the committee of the whole meetings as a village board, and that is where we set our budget. And I've been told we just don't have any money to do anything right now. So what we should be doing, I did like the idea that Jeff came up with, and it was about hiring this capstone. But on item number E, but the reality is there are other companies that do this, and one was right in the municipality this month, and it's called University City, Uver City. So, and in addition to that, we've worked with Sewer Pack. Sewer Pack does free consulting for any project, parks, trails, commercial, whatever. So there are a lot of resources, and I know we're tight on the budget. So please look at those as well. Item A, I'm very concerned that you have 180 pages of chapter 17 and 18, and it states something like we think that the DNR, this is the minimum that we should be doing. I think that Germantown is a better community and we should be doing more than just the minimum to protect our wetlands. And I am all about wetlands and I'm a tree hugger. All right, so also on D, it's for developing Green Bay packaging. Don't have anything against Green Bay packaging, but why are we doing this before we even have a plan for that area? It doesn't make any sense. And we keep getting some of these agenda items where it's, we're not quite ready. There are other buildings available that have a lot of square footage. I believe Briggs and Capstone is building as well. The other thing is intergovernmental agreement. We need financial ledger for this. IGA is a lot of money and we need to be able to follow it. And that was what I wanted to say, except that, and just to add that we don't have an engineer at this moment or a village clerk. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? Public hearing, public input, public appearance? Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on. That'll bring us to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes from June 22nd, or June 12th, 2023. Need a motion and a second.
I move approval as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. That'll bring us down to item 5, new business. Item A on the agenda is Village of Germantown Community Development Department proposed text amendment to Chapter 17 and Chapter 18 regarding the use of green infrastructure best management practices to reduce stormwater pollution and improve water quality. Public hearing and action for this item. Director Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, we have some zoning and subdivision code text amendments. They are recommended by the DNR in coordination with Grafe Consulting. Under the Wisconsin Sea Grant Program, they have been reviewing, auditing, if you will, local municipality zoning, subdivision, and other development regulations for barriers to the implementation and use of green infrastructure in development and new redevelopment. They came through approximately 8 years ago with their first review of our codes, and some changes were made more significantly to the design review, design components of our engineering code and requirements. But they did pass through and make some suggested changes to the zoning code at the time. And we did try to implement the one change that they were really most concerned about, relatively speaking, and that had to do with parking lot stall size. If you recall, we've had various conversations over the years where our minimum parking stall size, 180 square feet. There's been efforts to reduce that to 162 square feet, like many communities have, to ultimately reduce the amount of pavement associated with new development. And that is a recommendation in this code, once again, in the series of code amendments that are proposed. That's probably the only, what in my opinion, the most significant change that's proposed that we've discussed before. Beyond that, most of them are fairly benign. Yes, the code has 180 pages in the zoning code, but if you scan through it, the changes are those that are highlighted in yellow, and they're relatively benign and just minor in their intent and extent. Let me just take a shot at what green infrastructure actually is. A series of effective water management practices, means, measures using natural and man-made features that are designed to improve water quality and or reduce flooding by reducing stormwater volume and pollution. Infiltration basins, rain gardens, permeable pavement, subsurface detention basins, rain barrels, green roofs are all things that are proactive items that can be implemented, and the changes in the code that address these things are more like adding words, definitions, and language that don't require the use of these items, but at the same time, they don't prohibit the use of them. And in most cases, through the zoning code, all of these changes would ultimately be implemented through your review, staff review of zoning permits, and ideally site development and building plan approvals, like the items we have on tonight's agenda. And I'm going to quickly go through. There are probably 30-some specific amendments, and they fit into a series of categories. They're either definitions, again, minimum parking stall size and number of stalls required for businesses. The changes are intended to allow the use of vegetated stormwater features in landscaping, allow the use of permeable pavement under certain circumstances with village approval. They modify our dumpster enclosure and screening design requirements to prevent contaminated runoff. It adds some language dealing with snow storage areas and identifying those on site plans so that they can be located in areas that won't result in contamination of contaminated runoff. Modified shared parking allowance. We currently have an allowance in our code that allows for shared parking between different uses. The change here is a more definitive and more detailed requirement. If somebody wants to share parking, they have to go through an actual detailed analysis to show how that's going to work out. And there's also a section in there, a modification to our density bonus for additional landscaping using green infrastructure. We can talk about that in detail, but the last two are things that frankly we've never used. Shared parking we've used once, twice since I've been here, and the density bonus for the use of additional landscaping has never been used through our development code. So those things, while we're making some changes to make DNR happy, there are things that ultimately we're going to have to probably change again to make them either usable or to take them out altogether. There are two non-green infrastructure amendments that are proposed. I would categorize them as house cleaning measures. The first is adding some language to our accessory building and structure section to specifically make it also apply to commercial and industrial uses and not just exclusively residential. And also adding some restrictions concerning gazebos, pergolas, and arbors, other outdoor furniture type features that mostly are used in residential uses that we currently don't have any allowance for or regulation of. And the second non-GI amendment is related to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We needed to clarify the extent of how far we send out notices for adjacent property owners for the public hearing notices. We made a sweeping change a number of years ago to expand the requirement from 300 to 1,000 feet around a property subject of a public hearing. But with respect to Board of Zoning Appeal items that are typically variance appeals, there's really no reason to go out 1,000 feet. So we're proposing to step it back to what it was previously, 300 feet around an existing property subject to a variance hearing. And finally, with regard to the subdivision and platting code, some even fewer changes, all intended to reduce pavement and or allow the use of vegetated stormwater features in parts of landscaping. Definition changes, revised cul-de-sac design alternatives. They're in there and they're all subject to approval by the Public Works Department and the Plan Commission through the site development and building plan process. So with that, I'll respond to any questions you have before we go to public hearing.
Commissioners, any questions of the? Let's start with, Mr. Machewski.
On the parking spaces, so we're gonna go to 90% from what we're at today. I think it's 180, right? Take off 18, maybe it's 162, isn't that where we end up?
162 square feet.
Right, which is 10% less. So couldn't we like actually look a little harder at the code or what we're requiring? I know it's in here somewhere where I think for some of the larger distribution facilities, we require, I don't know, a couple hundred spaces. You got 18 people working there. Couldn't we look more at the use of the property? Retail is a good example. There's probably fewer people running in and out of some of these retail locations versus just saying, let's just make a blanket, make the spaces smaller, because it seems like vehicles aren't getting any smaller. Maybe someday they will, but it seems like in the last 10 years, they got larger. And so there's a public cost for that, ding doors, angry people, whatever. And it just seems like a poor way to manage a problem by just doing a blanket. Let's take all the parking spaces and make them 10% smaller.
I agree with you, but there's a couple of other things that are working that we should discuss along those same lines. As you may recall, the parking standards in our zoning code are specifically stated as being guidelines. That, and we allow businesses to come to us as part of their proposals and say, I don't need 600 stalls. I only need 200 because I have 3 shifts of employees and a total of 150 employees.
Right.
Which is exactly the issue that you raise. In fact, we have a project on our agenda tonight that exact scenario applies. With regard to the parking stall size, the dirty little secret, frankly, of how certain developers operate is they will show on their plans parking stall size at 9 feet wide by 20 feet long. So you scale it off, okay, you comply. When the plans make their way down to the actual person who's laying the paint on the ground, they do the alligator arm thing where they only put 18 feet of length, 9 feet wide. So in large measure, they're already doing that. They're already putting in 162 square feet of parking stall size. What doesn't get factored in is the aisle width. And that's where a combination of aisle width and stall size should be looked at in a more comprehensive approach to address the issue of pavement and take a legitimate attempt at trying to reduce pavement and maybe even go to requiring angled parking versus 90-degree. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can reduce the amount of pavement ultimately. What we have proposing in here is the minimum of what the DNR is looking for us to meet their quote unquote requirement. And again, I didn't say it earlier, but it's in the staff report. These are quote recommendations from the DNR, but they've made it clear that we need to make these sorts of changes in order to maintain compliance with our stormwater discharge permit that's issued ultimately through MMSD and the DNR. And so given the pressure that we're under to make these changes, to bring the codes into compliance, we thought it best to go ahead and propose in this package what they're proposing so that they'll find us compliant. And if we need to address the issue of parking stall size, we can at a later date. We're keeping the minimum width the same. We're not going or allowing the 8 feet of width. You may recall that the times that this has come up before, we tried to build in, a series of different parking stall sizes. So for an industrial user with little turnover during the day, shift work, they come in the morning, they leave 8 hours later. Cars aren't coming in and out, and there's no doors opening every, 10 minutes. So you don't need a large parking stall size for that. But ultimately, when those discussions made their way to the board, the argument always inevitably is made, well, everybody drives a truck. And I can't get in and out of a parking stall size that's only 9 feet wide. And we go round and round, and ultimately the decision is to not make those those changes to the parking stall size. So we'll see where it goes this time, but we're again proposing what the DNR is suggesting we do at a minimum to help retain our compliance.
One other thing, Jeff, what's the difference between a stormwater tree and a street tree?
That's a good question.
I thought too, thanks.
One that's a little bit more sensitive to and will flourish in an environment where there's fluctuation of water associated with stormwater management. You know, what we typically find around the edges of parking lots, you know, shrubbery that lasts about 2 or 3 years. And then after that, it needs to be replaced because of contamination from salts and other things associated with the road itself and generally snow storage and that sort of thing. But I don't have there is a definition here. We can read through it,
Sorry.
but again, it's adding some language that doesn't require these items to be used, but doesn't, it removes the barriers to their use.
My question was just focused on the items that require additional restrictions or requirements, such as the 4 screening off of the dumpsters in 4 areas and with a fence instead of using like landscape screening. Is that a prospective change where any new application is going to be required to do that, or how is it companies or places that have it screened with landscaping are going to have to go back and make those changes once or if we make this effective?
It's a good question. At this point, the intent is to enforce it from the date of adoption going forward, assuming it's adopted. A number of years ago, we tried to implement a dumpster screening requirement that we would use retroactively and go around the village and require those locations that currently have no screening to be screened. While it sounded good in theory, a lot of lobbying went on by existing developments, and ultimately the board rejected that particular proposal and was just content with applying what are now our current dumpster screening requirements for new development from that adoption date going forward.
Anybody else on the committee? Seeing none. Okay, yes, sir.
One other comment, there's a reference in here to, I think they call it Grasscrete.
Yes.
You know, again, some of the stuff I think is kind of neat. I'm not sure that technology is here yet. Was recently, I think it was in Tosa at the medical park down there, whatever, one of the buildings they use it at. My point is, some of the stuff isn't really snowplow proof. And that, you know, it's almost like a split face block, but turned on its side. And the snowplows are just tough on it. So after 10 years, it ends up just looking tattered and ragged because it's just chipped and broken. Maybe it still does what it's supposed to do. But I think when we see that, I assume it's probably more expensive than some other types of mitigation, that we bear that in mind. It seems like some of this stuff kind of seeps its way here. It comes out of, I don't know, New Mexico or something where it doesn't freeze as much, or they don't have this long winter. In fact, there's one area in here where they talked about you couldn't put snow like in a retention area, which I thought was odd because isn't snow water? But I don't know, maybe it's mixed in with the salt and some things like that. Again, I'm thinking DNR thought this through.
Well, it's going to also depend on the type of stormwater facility. If there's a 4-bay that is intended to clean out the water and filter it, those sorts of things. You know, a snow storage area that has some swales that can filter out some of the contaminants before it gets to the stormwater basin. So there's some more creative features that are going to need to be employed. We have a lot of developments that do that now. Some, you know, like to cut corners and do the absolute minimum. But I think all in all, we've been fairly good at enforcing the green infrastructure requirements we currently have, so I would assume that we will continue to do so going forward. But ultimately, all of these things are going to require approval either through the Plan Commission or the village engineer in their review of development proposals, as they have been doing consistently as part of the process.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, I will open up the public hearing. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Village of Germantown Plan Commission at the Germantown Village Hall located at North 112 West 17001 Mequon Road, Germantown, Wisconsin, and virtually through the WebEx platform on the following date and at the time noted below. Monday, July 10th at 6:30 PM or later. The purpose of said hearing will be to hear all parties, their attorneys or agents for and against the petitions filed by the Village of Germantown Department of Development for the proposed text amendment to portions of the zoning code, Chapter 17 and Chapter 18 of the Village of Germantown Municipal Code for the purpose of allowing and encouraging the use of green infrastructure, best management practices to reduce stormwater pollution and improve water quality in the compliance with Germantown's Wisconsin Pollution Discharge Elimination System, WPDES, MS-14 permit. A copy of the proposed text amendment described above is on file with the Community Development Department, Planning and Zoning Services Office in the Village of Germantown Hall, and can be viewed on the Village Zoning Village Zoning Hub and website by following either of the links below. Citizens wishing to submit any public comments should do so by sending them to email at germantown.gov, Wisconsin, no later than 4 PM on the meeting date listed above. Did we get anything electronically? Okay. Anybody wishing to come forward to speak on this topic? Nobody wishing to come forward on this one. Okay. One more time. Anybody wishing to come forward? Nope. I'll close the public hearing and go back to the board. Do we have a motion? Motion to approve to get it on the docket for starting a
I
discussion.
will make a motion that we approve the summary as given to us.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, with a motion and a second, is there discussion on comments you'd like to make based on what you've heard, things that you've read in here that you are questioning or concerning? Or are we all good with the number of changes that we saw? Minute changes. Seeing as no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That'll take us to item B on the agenda, MSI General Agent for Mold Makers Investment LLC, property owners of MGS Manufacturing at West 188 North 11707 Maple Road. This is for a site plan review of architectural and material revisions to a previously approved 118,650 square foot building. We will take action on this. Director Retzlaff, lead us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall back in May, the Plan Commission approved plans for this particular expansion to the MGS facility. We received notification a week or so ago that they would like to request a minor amendment to the southeast corner of the building. And John Kutz with MSI is here this evening to go through and explain what those changes are.
Stand here, Jeff.
Yep. That one.
Okay. Good evening, John Coots with MSI General. As Jeff said, we did have this project in front of the Plan Commission back in May. We've been working with MGS on final plan design changes and adjustments, and there was a previously approved corner rendering, which you can see in the slide here. Thanks, Jeff, of the southeast corner that showed kind of a glass and metal wrapped corner. working through the final layout with MGS, that area is going to be all warehousing space with racking, high bay racking. And so we were working through potential changes just to make that more functional for them. And I reached out to Jeff and Lori just asking, hey, if we do make a change on this corner, what's the process? And Jeff recommended we come to the Plan Commission just to show it to you. So we do have here, again, the previously approved rendering. This is not the primary entrance. There's actually no entrance here. Not really shown in the rendering is the stormwater pond, which makes up the majority of the green space there. So it's actually up against a stormwater pond as well that services the site. And so the proposed change, if you flip there, is to kind of square off the corner with the precast panel and then minimize some of the windows, mostly because it's all going to be high density storage for raw materials in that space. So just following the process, wanted to bring it to the Plan Commission for potential approval to make that change.
Okay.
Or approval not to make the change, I guess, either way, so.
Thank you. Anything further?
No, other than you serve as the Architecture Review Board, have that authority to make those changes. I just thought it was worth bringing to the Plan Commission because it's on the east facade facing Maple. It's a prominent location, you know, the approved feature is complementary to what's
Main
that?
entrance.
Yeah, the main entrance and that curtain wall concept. I think it's attractive what was proposed or was approved. And in the explanation, it sounded as if the reason was that it's going to be used for storage so that, you know, they don't want somebody looking in or they don't want the visibility of that. Or the light. I don't know which, if maybe I'm wrong or misinterpreted what was provided, but you know, we've had other examples where the use of whether glass block or some other sort of you know, window feature, yeah, could have been used or has been used to effectively provide the same level of usage without taking away from the
Aesthetic.
visual aesthetics. Yes. So.
All right, let's see what the commission has to say. Commission members, motion, second, or just so we can discuss it.
I will make a motion for, just so we can start discussion that we approve the design change.
We have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? We have a motion and a second. Okay, discussion.
So I didn't really have a problem with the change, but David, I assume there's going to be some style look here or something that you might not like, but I mean, it is a manufacturing facility. If that corner was purely a decorative window, as a manufacturing guy, I'd just soon have a nice blank wall there.
There's,
I don't know.
from my perspective, there's your optimal word, a blank wall.
Well, okay.
On the
but that's
front
my-
facade of a building, on a main thoroughfare in Germantown that we have,
Oh, I
dressed
think,
up the
I
other
think it
day.
looks pretty good the way it is right there in that rendering.
so. I'm only one vote. Mr. Tarantino,
I like it the way it used to be.
See?
okay, Mr. Lashewski.
I don't mind the defenestration on the south side, but I like what the corner was. So I'm kind of in the middle. South windows, way, I guess it would be what, the west end. I'm okay with those windows being removed like they are here, but the corner feature, I like the corner feature. I think it makes that building completely, as it is now, it's not very good.
Mr. Williams.
I will admit I was not at the May meeting, so I did not see the initial rendering. I will say when I look at the two options, the one that was approved, I like much more than the one that's been proposed tonight. I guess I have two questions. One is, you were just here in May with the rendering. I mean, do we not know in May when we brought that building for approval that what was going to be used in that area, or has that changed since you received approval?
Yeah, that was all part of, you have to remember when we are in the meeting in May, we actually have to submit that 2 months prior. So the plan that was submitted for May was actually submitted back in March, right?
Okay.
And so between March and now, we've worked through space planning and also business operations for MGS. And that space originally they had thought could potentially be used for office space. This is just showing again one corner of the building. The main entrance has a very pronounced glass entryway as well, which is really the corner that you see when you drive through there. This corner here, while the rendering is meant to show you clearly the corner. There will be quite a bit of landscaping that blocks it. If you drive by that building, there's a tremendous amount of large mature maples that block the view of this corner. And then MGS essentially decided, hey, that part of the area is going to be warehousing, and we would, again, high bay, high density racking that they use. Most manufacturers use now, as square footage is expensive. The glass windows wasn't doing anything for them. They preferred the blank wall, as Bill mentioned, because it was more functional for how they were trying to lay that out. So again, if it's not approved or allowed to switch it, it's not, we'll make it work. It was a request from them, and we're following the process to bring it forward here for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Then one other clarification. There's a picture in here that says it's the existing view from Maple Road. Is that, I just want to clarify it. To me, when I drove by, it looks like it's the existing road from Fulton Drive, not from Maple Road. Is that correct? This one?
Which graphic?
Page 200 in our book. I think if you keep paging down. Maybe a couple more screens forward.
This is all he's put in the presentation.
That's all he's put in the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. In our pamphlet, it's screen 200 or page 200, and I drove by. It looks to me like that's the existing view from Fulton Road, not from Maple. But
It could very well be.
okay, all right, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that what we're seeing on the screen here is going to be what we're seeing from Maple, not from Fulton, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Or Maple. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So what I will comment on is if you toggle back and forth between the two pictures, notice the left side of the building. Most of the windows have also been removed from the side of the building. You got 3 banks there, you've got 7 banks there. 3, 7. So from my perspective, I prefer the original, this layout. And if you don't want the glass, just put spandrel glass in. I'm fine with nothing, with the windows not being visible. So that'll give you what you're looking for, but give us what we're looking for at the same time. So that's my 2 cents. Further discussion. Motion was to approve the change. Motion was to approve the change. All in favor of approving the change, say aye.
All right.
All opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries to, we got 1 person for, 4 against. The motion fails. Okay. So, hey, thank you for coming in. Next item on the agenda is item C, Bryan Construction Corporation, agent for Golden Pet Manufacturing and Goldendale Road 4 LLC, property owner at West 206 North 12880 Gateway Court, site plan review of a 129,147 square foot building addition and certified survey map. Action will be taken. Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, Golden Pet Manufacturing clearly is doing quite well and is seeking approval for plans to expand their facility with 3 building additions that collectively total just over 129,000 square feet that would be added to the existing 172,000 square feet. So a significant expansion over the existing operation that was approved just back in September of 2021. So congratulations to Golden Pet. The proposal requires a certified survey map and site development and building plan approval. The CSM is needed to combine 2 parcels and redivide them to accommodate the building expansion on the north side of the existing facility, and also to accommodate the relocation of an existing stormwater basin or portion of that existing stormwater basin. Some of the site improvements, there's no change to access. Access will continue to be from Gateway Court, 2 different driveway locations. Stormwater management, additional roof drains and on-site storm sewer to relocate to convey runoff to 2 basins, a relocated basin to the northwest corner that I'll show you in just a second, and an existing basin in the southwest corner that currently serves the dielectric development. Landscaping, a continuation of the foundation plantings, the east elevation, continuation of the undulating berm along Goldendale Road and the street trees, and additional lighting on the building addition on the south, the west, and the north. Couple of graphics. Here's a color version that may be more helpful to the proposed site plan. The orange or light tan colored, those are the additions to the existing facility in the middle. The largest component of the expansion is the addition to the north. And as you can see, just north of that, there's a narrow stormwater basin that is proposed. I'm going to jump ahead here. This graphic on the top part shows the existing stormwater basin that's located immediately north of the existing facility. As you can see on the plan view in the bottom, that basin is going to be relocated, or a portion of it, to the west in the wooded area, which is located on the south side of another property, the what we call the Dickman 3 building, that will be relocated in that location. There'll be a small portion of stormwater basin that will be reconstructed north of the existing basin on the what would be the south side of the Dickman 2 building property. All of those, that basin serves all of those properties and will continue to do so. It just will be in a different split into two different locations on the north side. And then again, additional runoff will be conveyed to what's now the dielectric basin along Freistadt, along Holy Hill Road. That basin has been sized to accommodate runoff from this particular site because of the topography. So it's the stormwater management is okay in this area, and while there's some outstanding items, technical corrections that are being looked for from the engineer, they have no problem with what's proposed. In fact, we have received revised plans, revised stormwater information just today to address some of the concerns of this village engineer reviewing the project, and that has yet to be reviewed, but will be, and that's one of the conditions of approval recommended by staff. The building improvements themselves, again, 3 separate building additions totaling 129,000 square feet. The additional space being added is for manufacturing, production, and warehouse space. There's no increase in employees associated directly with this particular expansion. And so the parking stall count, while it does change minimally, I think there's 2 additional stalls that are proposed. It's mostly relocating parking from what was on the south side of the building to the east side of the building, just adjacent to the north building expansion. Same precast insulated concrete wall panels and insulated metal panels on the west elevation. The same 3-tone color scheme and reveals will be repeated. Roof mounted mechanicals will be hid behind parapet walls. There are some graphics in here that in the application that show the vision from the public streets and those mechanicals hidden behind the parapet walls. Aluminum storefront window systems, again, continuation from the existing to match. Additional loading docks on the west side of the north building addition are also proposed. The building rendering looking essentially from above the intersection of Holy Hill at Goldendale, looking northwest across the site. This is a closer up version of the facility looking northwest. Here's a graphic looking northeast from essentially the Gateway Court intersection on Holy Hill Road. And looking southwest from essentially the Rockfield at Goldendale Road. I'm sorry, south of Rockfield Road, but on Goldendale Road, looking southwest across the property. Building elevations, again, architecture, materials, reveals, all to match the existing building. And if need be, we can look at those in more detail. Lighting plan, additional lighting is proposed on the south side of the building addition, and north side and west. Here are the vision angle sight lines for the parapet wall and RTU components. Staff comments, minimal additional parking is proposed, but given the expansion for production and warehouse with no increase in employees, that is not necessarily a problem. As indicated in the staff report, I believe it was approximately 600 parking stalls are called for under our guidelines. 170 are proposed. 162 are currently provided on the site. One issue that is of concern, the proposed lighting on the south building addition is shown at a mounted height of 22 feet. This was a significant issue that was raised when the original building was approved with a former Plan Commission member. And ultimately, the Plan Commission required that the fixtures mounted on the building on the south elevation be mounted at a height not to exceed 14 feet. So that, assuming the Plan Commission would approve this with a similar condition, that would have to change. Village engineer comments. There's a technical memo dated June 26th with some minor issues and plan corrections that are called out. As I mentioned, we received revised plans today that address those items. Those will need to be reviewed and approved, and that is a condition of approval. Similarly, the village surveyor had some minor corrections to the CSM. We did receive revised CSM pages with those changes. Those will need to be reviewed and approved. And finally, wastewater utility had some comments. Sanitary sewer connection fees and a new wastewater discharge, a notice of intent will be required as part of the expansion and are required prior to issuance of building permits. The staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for the proposed expansion, subject to 8 conditions, and also recommending approval of the proposed certified survey map, subject to 1 condition. We do have members of Bryan Building Corporation. I believe Caitlin LaJoy is here to respond or have any comments at this point, or do you want to just respond to questions? Or anyone else with the representing Bryan Building or the Golden Road or Golden Pet?
Hi, thank you. Caitlin LaJoy, Bryan Building. I am here to answer any questions along with our project engineer and civil engineer.
Commission members, any questions for Ms. LaJoy at this time?
I didn't understand the part about the lighting. Is there,
When this first
Yeah,
came
what-
through
yeah,
a long time ago.
but I mean, is there anything we need to do about that tonight?
You would make a motion to follow the motion that was in the original submittal to lower the lights to 14 feet, which would be an additional condition, a 9th condition, if I,
think it's in there, 14.
number 6. Okay.
Yeah,
You don't have to do anything because it's in there already. Okay. Commissioners, we have a motion to get it on the table for discussion.
I'll move approval with the requirements that are laid out in our package.
8 conditions.
8 conditions.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
A second.
That's just for the first 8 items, not the certified survey.
Correct.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mr. Leszewski.
Not to belabor the lights, but they were approved originally at 14, but they ended up at 22.
No, I'm sorry if I misspoke. They were originally proposed at 22 and the Plan Commission required them to be lowered to 14 feet.
Okay, so they are at 14 now and they'll remain at 14 if this is approved that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Mr. Tarantino.
Does anybody live in that house? south of it.
My understanding is offers were made, they were rejected. They're building accordingly.
Somebody owns it and has been fixing it up. I don't know that there's anybody living in there necessarily.
Would that be a correct statement that I made?
Question I had.
So yes, to the original comments made by residents, the building is looming over the house. Yes, but they have reached out to the homeowners to try and mitigate that and got nowhere. Further questions? Mr. Laszewski.
So remind me how many square feet are being added?
It's combined about 130,000,
But there's no new employees?
correct?
So is it all storage or warehousing space?
Yes.
We have about 160 employees today. We're at shifts are the same. We were 24/7 operation today. We'll be 24/7.
Not adding 40 new people on one shift, you are adding 40 new
Across.
people throughout the
Yep,
shifts.
mostly more second shift. That's where a lot of it will end up.
So that's why we don't need all the parking because those 40 people are throughout.
Yep, in our parking lot, if you look at it, most days is only half full at this point anyway.
Thank you.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
Director Retzloff, is this in a TIF district? Is this not contributing to a TIF district? What do we know about that?
This is in the TIF district.
Okay, so adding this addition to the building will potentially shorten our duration of the TIF. That's what we usually see when we add more buildings, but it will not go on our tax roll right away.
Well, certainly will help. I don't know to what extent it'll reduce the duration of the district, but it's positive development that is being added on to what is already a very successful TIF district for the village.
Correct. Okay. Further questions, comments, discussion of any kind? Motion being to approve with the 8 comments just for the site plan and building approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Need a motion for part 2?
I will make the motion that we approve the certified survey map, including the one condition or condition 9.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. You are approved.
You want to deal with the CSM?
Oh, we gotta do this. I don't have that on my screen. Okay, next item is the CSM. Thought that was the second vote motion with the one account, one. What? Yeah,
It was?
yes,
Oh, okay.
that was part 2.
Okay.
With item, comment number
Yeah,
9,
Right.
which is actually comment number 1 for the CSM.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, we're all on the same page now. All right, that brings us to item E. No, item D. Again, Bryan Building Corporation, agent for Brian and Kevin Kazmerzak, property owners, and Green Bay Packaging, proposed development consultation for a 233,450 square foot corporate office and light manufacturing facility. This is for discussion only and no action. Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, Bryan Building Corp., agent for the property owners, and Green Bay Packaging are seeking feedback on a potential 52-acre, 233,000 square foot corporate office light industrial development located in the northeast corner of the I-41 Holy Hill Road interchange in the Holy Hill Gateway District. Property is highlighted in white. It's adjacent to 41, effectively behind the quote-unquote gas station at the interchange. And here this evening, we have Joe Jersenis with Bryan Building and Dave Malley with Green Bay Packaging, who will be presenting their proposal for discussion. Want to click through your slides? The right arrow button. Hi, Joe Jersenis with Bryan Building Corporation. And as Jeff mentioned, we're here today to discuss the proposed development for our client Green Bay Packaging, Great Lakes Division. Here today is Dave Malley and Steve Wolf from Green Bay Packaging. So the Great Lakes Division of Green Bay Packaging currently operates out of 4 separate buildings on Carnegie Drive in Germantown. Their current operations are limited due to the inefficiencies of operating out of multiple facilities and having the ability to expand on their existing footprint. So they're landlocked and they're trucking stuff back and forth on a daily basis and just need to figure something out. So this proposed development's necessary to allow the organization to consolidate their operations into one facility. So it's desirable for Green Bay Packaging to stay within Germantown. They like it here, they want to stay here. However, there's a lack of available industrial land and there's immediate need for them to develop a new facility. So they're prepared to relocate to a neighboring municipality if something's not able to work out on this site. So I'm going to walk you through the proposed development plan that we have, and then Dave Malley's going to come up and talk about what their current operations are and what they'll be operating out of this facility. But the ask today out of the board members is to just see if you guys are willing to support this use on this site. And we understand we're going to need to come back and we're going to need to talk through all the development agreements, whether there's a road or no road, and then even the architectural side of it. What we've put together today is a good representation of what fits Green Bay Packaging's needs, and I feel fulfills the aesthetic needs of this site as well. So if we switch over, so Jeff mentioned the 52-acre site that we're talking about. Southern property is Holy Hill Road. The northern property line is going to be Rockfield Road. To the east is Highway 41, and to the west is all the other adjacent industrial property. So in summary with this project, we're looking to rezone it from A1 to M1, create a new CSM combining the parcels as needed, and then work with Germantown to construct a public road connecting Holy Hill to Rockfield. And then we'll be constructing approximately a 233,000 square foot building as the first phase of this development. So if we take a look at the aerial behind us, this photo is taken from the northeast corner looking onto the property. So Holy Hill's to the right.
Southeast corner.
Southeast corner. Is the southeast corner, I guess, looking northeast.
West corner looking northeast.
Southwest looking north. Correct.
Okay.
All right. So Holy Hill's to the right, Rockfield's to the left, 41 is to the left, and then off in the distance, as you can see, is all the adjacent industrial property that's there. So the site plan that we're looking to talk about is coming off of Holy Hill Road, looping all the way on the west side of the property, north, and connecting up to Rockfield Road. Take considerations on how to redo access to the gas station that hasn't been designed or put in place yet, but it will be part of the master plan of that development. All setbacks, right-of-way requirements, green space, all that will be taken into an account. As we're looking at on the site plan here, and this is conceptual. All the darker green areas that we're talking about, these are areas where we're going to emphasize some sort of landscaping. You know, we understand that this is a visible building to the freeway. We understand this is coming into the community. But we also feel that it's adjacent to all the industrial, and this being more of a headquarters feel, it's going to fit right in on this site. So the conceptual pond locations are in light blue, will be engineered, will be verified. And the building itself is going to be 233,450 square feet, 20,000 square feet of office space over 2 stories. 112,000 square feet of expansion to the east of it. About 160 parking stalls are what's on the site now as shown. Manufacturing process for Green Bay, which Dave will talk more about, is primarily throughput. So raw materials on the north, finished goods are coming out on the south, coming out of Holy Hill Road and accessing right onto 41.
So total building footprint potentially with the expansion would be about 345,000 square feet. Now, our architectural designs, which again are conceptual that fit Green Bay's requirements and we feel fit your guys are, we're going to be looking at, a max building height of about 41 feet. We'll be in compliance with all the setbacks requirements. The building itself is going to be painted precast concrete. We'll have cast-in patterns and form textures associated with it, aluminum tinted windows, metal sunshades, and building canopies as needed. So the plan is to give a headquarters feel and not just, more of a traditional inline industrial. So the site that we're looking at here, this would be the main office entrance. So this is as you come down that access road that will be coming north of Holy Hill Road. As you turn the corner, you're going to see this as you're starting to look. It would be northeast is the look. So you're standing, southwest at this point, looking onto the property. Visible two-story office, undulation in the front to kind of take it, some covered canopies in front where some of the break rooms are going to be. The next site we're looking at is southeast, and it's looking at the main office entrance from the other side. So the other view is coming in from this way. This is the other office where it's two-story offices coming up. And then this final rendering, this is just the southeast corner. So looking from the north-south of what the full building would look like. So, this development's a great opportunity, and it's an opportunity to keep a local manufacturing company that has deep employment history in this village. Their proposed use is a natural extension of the adjacent industrial buildings that are there right now. And it's comparable to the planned developments that are going to be happening right across the street to the freeway. So Richfield already has a master industrial plan there that's going to be high density. This is actually going to complement, you guys are not having a high dense industrial building here or multi-industrial complex. So we've done a lot of projects in Germantown as Brian building, and we understand the quality you guys are going to look for out of this building. And I'm confident we'll be able to get there if we work together. But our task today is, not to get complete sign off, but we're just looking to see if you guys are willing to approve this use. So I'm going to bring Dave Malley up here and he can kind of talk about what the operations are in their current buildings. And then I'll be up here to answer questions as well, unless you guys want to jump into questions on the proposed development before you hear about the operations.
So let's hear from
Okay.
Dave first, and then we'll get into our discussions.
Sounds good.
Good evening. Dave Malley, Vice President of Operations, Green Bay Packaging, Great Lakes Division. As Joe stated, we have 4 plants. I get a lot of steps in every day. And it's inefficient. We've been here since 1970. We were the first industrial building in the park off of Maple there. And we like Germantown. We'd like to stay. We have a very good workforce. Our business is growing. It's been doing well. Currently, we lease. That's going to be up in June 2026. So there's not a lot of land available. And we're looking for 50 acres in Germantown.
Okay.
So we'd be adding some new equipment. We would be adding approximately 15 employees, hourlies. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions of the owner, the manager, the vice president? No questions at this time? We'll get back to you when we have them. Okay. All right, Director Etzloff, you want to lead us off?
Yes. Jump in and paraphrase some of what I stated in the staff report. But clearly, the primary reason we're discussing this evening is to make a determination as to whether or not this is a suitable use for this particular location in light of the 2050 plan, the Holy Hill Gateway District that was adopted, that this property located within. And the current vision that was adopted as part of the 2050 plan for this area to sort of bridge the gap between adoption of the plan and completion of the detailed master plan for the entire area. And as you recall, this is the land use vision that was adopted as part of the 2050 plan, and I've highlighted with the black solid line there the property location at the interchange of Holy Hill and 41. And that vision currently is for a mixed commercial and high-density residential development at that particular location. You know, it was, the concept was something that's been discussed consistently over the years for this particular interchange on the north side as well as on the south side. Under this vision, that particular area extends south of Holy Hill, across the railroad into the Freistadt district, basically abutting Highway 41 on the east side, almost the entire length of the Holy Hill Gateway and the Freistadt districts themselves. Again, this is a plan that was adopted with the understanding that it was a vision based on the current thought process for the area, subject to refinement as part of the master plan process. And what's nice about this particular property is that environmental corridor. Go back here to the site plan. And you can see it here. There's a navigable waterway that lies east of this proposed development and west of the Zilber development, the Germantown Corporate Gateway Corporate Park. A nice buffer that's reflected in our 2050 plan, the vision, within which the thought was that we would continue the trail system that was starting. In fact, if you look closely at this graphic, there's essentially trail running through all of the green areas, through the middle of them, around the perimeter of the Holy Hill Gateway District, and through the middle of the Freistadt in the Holy Hill Gateway districts as well. The mixed commercial, high-density residential is a concept at this point. We don't have the zoning districts. We don't have the master plan done that would support that type of development. With that said, this is the plan that we currently have. And the question is, do we abandon this approach at this point without seeing and note the benefit of our master planning effort and buy into the idea that we should continue the existing corporate office and light industrial development all the way to 41 in this particular location, or do we hold out and wait for that process to play out and see where we end up? That's what we need to discuss.
Okay.
And that's really the direction. Now, with that said, if it's clear, for example, that the Planning Commission wants to pursue this, then we need to start talking about some of the finer points. The frontage road and recreation trail location, you know, on the concept plan, that's all on the west side of the site, right adjacent to 41. The original thought it would be along the environmental corridor on the east side. Maybe that's just a horse apiece, doesn't matter, who knows? But then the issue of, going backwards here. Billing location, the orientation, what uses would be put to the other development parcels that were shown, the building architecture materials, landscaping, the typical site and development issues and features. So with that, I'll just sit back and
Okay.
let you guys jump in.
Let me ask a couple of kickoff questions. Is this going to be part of the TIF? Or is this outside of a TIF?
It's outside of the TIF currently, but that doesn't preclude TIF dollars from TIF being spent on improvements. You can spend money from a TIF within a half or quarter mile of the perimeter. In this case, the frontage road location, regardless of where it is within that.
Okay, but once this is built, it's 100% on the tax roll. It's not in the TIF district and it's not partially on the tax roll.
At this point, that would be true, yes. I don't know where this ultimately leads as far as TIF districting.
Okay, and to answer an earlier question as to is this or is this not that special zone, the dotted line, why I said no is because the dotted line, the black dotted line at L shape is the special zone that I've mandated, made note of, that has to go through and work with the neighbors. Okay? Melanie, I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I said, no, it's not, is because that is what I remember that we said was special.
That's fine. But there's still a whole master planning effort.
Yes, yes.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, commission members, questions, comments, discussion. Mr. Torrentino.
If, if we waited until the consultation was done or the master plan in spring or summer of 24, is that too late for you? Like they're already gone then, moved on?
Yes.
Just a question.
So the biggest question is, do you want to hold out for this mixed use, commercial, high density residential format for everything in the orange color? Put together a master plan for that and hope that comes forward, or do you want to capitalize on this group who's coming forward with a plan right now? What do we really want to see in that zone?
Well, I like the project, but what have we told people we would do?
We have, what we've talked about in the 2050 planning discussions is what Jeff just said. It is a mixed-use development that would support the businesses that are in the area with other supportive uses. Hotel potentially, office space, restaurants, residential for.
I mean, realistically, this is our last undeveloped interchange area in the village. And for many, many years, there's been talk of the village trying to encourage, allow development to occur in this location, as well as down 41, consistent with what's in other municipalities nearby. Whitestone Station, the junction, all of that in Menominee Falls is a concept that many have thought would work here. But we don't know that at this point. And that's part of the effort if you recall the RFP that was published, and we're waiting till the end of this month to get proposals from consultants to help us with that effort, speaks to providing market research information that would help us shed light on whether or not the uses that are shown in our vision plan are reasonable and legitimate. It may very well be, frankly, that the plan comes back and says that those types of uses may not be suitable in the amount or in this particular location. In which case, we may very well fall back on, well, let's just designate it as light industrial corporate office and continue the pattern. But as indicated in the staff report, I just think it's premature.
What's premature?
Just jumping ship and saying, let's make a decision now without going through the planning process. I know the problem is we can't adopt a master plan or a 2050 plan and then shut everything down and adopt a moratorium until we work through the master planning process. That's not legal and that's not reasonable. So we have to deal with these things as they come, as we slowly work through the process, even with the understanding that budgets are tight and funds for master plans are difficult to find these days. So,
we have a RFP out for a master plan.
We do.
Master plan.
Yes.
So that step, we're working towards that, but a developer has come forward prior to us getting. And now we have choice to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come up to the mic, please.
One of the good things I feel like you guys have going for you is you have more land. I mean, you do have more land that you can incorporate some of these mixed uses into as you start to figure out the master planning. You know, I view this as a corridor that it literally extends the industrial. And I know there's a navigable waterway and the walkway can be figured out, but you know, if you're looking at an extension of this, I mean, that's 52 acres of a mixed use project. I mean, the Corners is a quarter of that. I mean, it's a massive, massive amount of property to be utilized for mixed use, and that's my personal opinion. But you have other land. I mean, if you pull up the master plan, there's other spots where you can incorporate some of these ideas into it, and still keeping a company like Green Bay. I mean, some of this land originally was looked at as maybe doing this development on, and it's probably more set up for some sort of mixed use. It's really hard to get industrial back there based off the use, proximity to the freeway, crossing the railroad tracks. So, I don't know, in my opinion, I don't think you guys should feel like you're completely eliminating the possibility for mixed use.
Okay.
Instead, you're keeping Green
Thank
Bay
you.
here.
I'll go to Mr. Shadid first.
I guess I'm kind of torn on this. I mean, I see the point you bring up, Jeff, and I understand what we've worked on to do this, but I also have experience with this company. Don't anymore, I'm retired, but they're a good member of our society, of our village here. I'd hate to see them leave. They're worth trying to work with. I don't know. I see this as a good addition to that area. But at the same time, when I say I'm torn, I know what we've been talking about, so. Just to throw that in for reference.
Mr. Leszewski, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I guess I look at this parcel of land and look at the process we followed to kind of get here. And I think to put this property here kind of abandons that process of discerning what could be here and how it could look. One of the key attributes is the freeway frontage. You know, to put a light industrial property along the highway there, I don't know if, in my book, if that's the highest and best use of that location and that visibility. Having said that, given the state of commercial real estate today, it's 20 years ago, it'd be real easy to say what would be here. Today, it's not as easy. The high density residential, I think, has merit. I think that could be a real use and to help those businesses around it, workforce and all that. But at the end of the day, as compelling as this project is, I just think it gives short shrift to the intentional process that we kind of laid out for this area. That we're not following that intentional process for being super opportunistic and saying, okay, Paul, yeah, go. As much as I value what this company, having been here for what, 52 years or something like that, that's impressive.
Mr. Williams?
I guess I'm going to concur with Mr. Leszewski in that I think we need to follow the process. I think if we get to the point of determining that it's not, that mixed commercial and residential use is not going to work, and we have an opportunity to, to transition over to a light industrial, who's saying there's not going to be another opportunity once we make that decision. But I think we need to follow through and come up with a plan before. I kind of feel like if we don't follow through, we don't really have a plan in place. We're just kind of jumping at anything that anybody who puts a proposal in front of us. So my thought is we at least need to see it through.
Any further comments from anybody else? I too am torn on it. I like the vision that we had set out to work for. However, understanding that this building is not going to be in our TIF and it's immediately taxable, that money goes right onto our books and we need funding for police and fire, which is a hard thing to turn down at this point. So sounds like there are more people interested in waiting for the right thing to come along, get the master plan done, and fewer people wanting to accept another warehouse building on this site. Is that the consensus of the board? We're not taking a vote, but trying to give our petitioner a some kind of guidance as to where this board wants to go, where this committee wants to go.
Well, how does it work if you say that building goes in and the plan comes back or the Grafe comes back with their idea of what it could be? Then is that frontage road? I know it's imaginary at this point, but is that functional enough to be the frontage road to the rest of what could be?
The frontage road, wherever it goes in, will be designed to accept a certain amount of traffic based on our assumptions of what we're putting in.
Right.
We have to have neighborhood meetings on that L shape as to what will be accepted there. I don't see that getting turned over to more commercial, more industrial. We do have what is south of Holy Hill Road that could be our vision. It's just a smaller amount of it.
Well, and that's something to keep in mind too. You look at this particular graphic and you say, well, there's a lot of red, we could just move our vision, to some other location. When you look on the south side of Holy Hill Road, clearly we have the mini storage facility there, and that property behind it. Essentially, it's a redevelopment site as opposed to this 50-some acres, which is more of a green field. The frontage road, as you head south on Holy Hill Road, requires a railroad crossing, which we're in the process of working towards applying to DOT and the Commissioner of the Railroads. That's not an easy task. We also have the utility extension to Richfield that goes through the Freistadt district, proposed to go through the Freistadt district south of the railroad. And it was intended to try and lay out the utility route along with a road system partially, or to the extent that we can, to serve development in that area. And as we'll be talking about shortly, we've received, wetland delineation information for the Freistadt district that shows a significant amount of wetland throughout that area, more than I think a lot of people might have imagined. So to what extent are we able to truly build on or develop all of the red, so to speak, along the rest of the stretch of I-41? That remains to be seen. And that, again, is we move closer to understanding what we have available to us for our quote-unquote vision of mixed commercial and high-density residential as we do more planning. So it may not be quite as easy as simply, well, let's just move our thoughts down here. We can plug that in at a later date. We don't know that yet.
David J. Frank has no aspirations to participate in anything right now.
None. None.
So that limits you even more. We all understand the vision that we were looking at is something more towards not necessarily the corridor or the corners of Brookfield, but it was in Menominee Falls where the fitness center is, Costco is, the apartment buildings are there. There's some other commercial buildings in there. That's kind of the envision, or what I call South 84, which is down by Southridge, 84th Street, the exit to get to Southridge coming from the west. That has all been redeveloped. It was redeveloped with retail and some offices, medical buildings. I'm not sure where the need for retail is currently, but that is in a sad state as I've experienced it. But office buildings, restaurants, hotels, can that support? Don't know till we get somebody who knows what they're doing a study on it, and that's what we're waiting for at this point.
Right. I mean, one of the things we need to really keep in mind is long-range planning. I mean, this is a 2050 plan, and while there may not be a dramatic need for retail today, things can change.
Right.
And that's something we really need to keep in mind. I mean, I'm harking back a story. Many of you know that I used to work for our neighbor to the west many, many years ago. And there was a significant pressure from a developer to build a RV center at the location where Cabela's is today. And I put up a lot of resistance to that, pointing to the village's future as to why we need to not just act on the first development that comes along for that particular location. And it caused a significant amount of angst on the part of a lot of people and decision makers. But ultimately, they decided to not move forward. The RV center went further north on 41, and within a short amount of time later, Cabela's came knocking on the door. I would like to think, I really wish that we could make things work for all of the developers that want to come through. I mean, Green Bay Packaging and their Bryan proposal isn't the only one that you're going to be presented with in the coming weeks and months. There's a lot of other discussions going on for properties, not just here and in the Freistadt district, but elsewhere in the village. And so, we need to decide ultimately, are we going to follow through on our planning efforts, or are we going to take advantage of these opportunities that come along? It is a tough decision. There's no question about it.
And for people who have said, I don't want these buildings anymore, it's just gonna go across the street. It's gonna be on the other side of the interstate. So it's gonna be in our neighborhood. We're still gonna look at it, but it's gonna be in somebody else's taxing district.
I agree.
So. You wanted to say something?
No, I understand the position you guys are in, and, I'm up here, dropping a bomb on you guys, changing something you guys been working towards for a long time. I'm also a real estate developer, and this is what I do. And I go through these, and you're gonna get these great studies, and they're gonna show all the things that could be there. But I also know how long it takes sometimes to do that stuff. And you have more land as I look at this, because we looked at even where else could we put the industrial, and it doesn't make sense even from that perspective. So, we've talked to other developers who have other specialties, and I think there's more sense to use some of the other red areas for it. I'm viewing this as, I don't even want to say a bird in hand. This is, a local company who wants to stay here. I mean, they're talking about how, this is where they've been since they started. They'd like to stay in this community. There's other options right around the corner, and they're here willing to figure out a way to make this work, extend themselves even further on the architectural side that they've drawn up. I think it needs some consideration. I could see if you guys were out of land completely, but if you just pivot the master planning possibly, you guys could see, the other stuff. It seems, this is a focal spot, but if you go back to the aerial, I mean, it's all industrial back there. What this is going to allow, this development now is going to allow it to do is even open up the stuff to the north. It's going to bring utilities in. We're going to get a public road going all the way through connecting Rockfield. I mean, it's not just hitting the tax base, but it's also getting a road put in that's going to allow for other developments.
And that is also problematic. So it's another, because you've got a small residential enclave to the north that doesn't want any of this.
But the right fit maybe it comes along.
Right.
So.
So I understand everybody's side of this. It's a challenging dilemma.
Well, keep in mind, one of the things we discussed was the frontage road. The frontage road isn't unique to this particular proposal. I mean, that's a given.
Yeah.
It's going to go in
Yes.
eventually. And it's going to connect to Rockfield and maybe even further north. That's the plan. And then south, ultimately to Freistadt. That's the plan. And we need to keep moving in that particular direction.
And on the map that you gave us today, the red line illustrates the water line route that we're currently negotiating.
That's the recommended route for both water and sewer through the Freistadt district. That could be discussed at our next item on the agenda. Yeah.
Next item.
Yep.
But it influences us.
No, I know it has some information about wetlands and other things that make sense. It's all interconnected.
Yes. So,
Now, can I make a suggestion? Because we're down 2 members, Chairman Walter and Peter Nillis. You know, if you take a straw vote, I don't know if you want to kick the can down the road to our next meeting, where we have a full contingent. I think it may, you know, one might argue it's only fair to hear from all of the members before some sort of decision is made, or but it might be helpful to take some kind of, if the comments don't constitute a straw poll at this point, that's up to you, but.
What is your take? Wait to get two more people. You've heard what this body has to say.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable one way or the other based on what I'm hearing, or you want to wait for two more people to get in and
When would the next meeting be?
second Tuesday of next month? Or if we have a special one?
Right now, we don't have a special one scheduled, but we can in 2 weeks. That would be the 24th.
Everybody gonna be here in 2 weeks? I won't be here in 2 weeks, but you've heard my comments already. I can virtual in 2 weeks. So I could.
It's okay with me.
There's no voting happening tonight anyway. and
No.
I
We don't have it
appreciate
on
the
the agenda
feedback,
for voting.
and I'm sure Green Bay Packaging appreciates the feedback as well. So we're gonna regroup, and then we'll reach out and we'll let you know about that. We'll get back to you tomorrow, and
Yeah, that would be helpful. We'll talk to Dean about possibly setting up a special meeting.
Okay.
If that's okay with the rest of the members. Who all thinks they can be here?
Oh, it's just me. I'm the problem.
All right.
Thanks.
we'll email you. All right,
Ask one
thank you.
question.
One more question.
Can I ask one question? So get to kind of, to follow up on the comment about the tax roll and the police and fire, are you willing to give me, because I'd like to go back and look at it a little closer, are you willing to give me a ballpark of what we would be talking about in value?
From a,
Cost that we'd be
no,
adding on?
from a building cost perspective, building cost perspective, real rough, high level, I mean, low to mid 20s, plus the property value, so.
Okay, and in the 4 locations that they're in now, they're leasing all the space, or they own any of the?
They're leasing all the spaces.
Leasing all the space, okay. And they're moving all 4 all 4.
Consolidating all
All
of
those
them.
buildings consolidating into one, correct, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Nope. Okay,
All right.
reach
thank
out
you.
to Jeff and we'll get you on for next meeting. All right, that brings us to item E, which is Village of Germantown status of Richfield intergovernmental agreement, IGA, to extend wastewater and water utility route. Recommendation, discussion, and action. Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in March, we discussed the Richfield IGA, the intergovernmental agreement, how it came about, how it became effective in December of 2022. The intention to serve the northeast corridor in the village of Richfield, approximately 300 acres of light industrial office warehousing and some minimal highway oriented retail commercial. We talked about the utility routes. At that time, there was a crude drawing that was included in the IGA that showed 2 alternatives, a red one and a blue one, going through different portions of the land that we call the Freistadt District. Well, not shown on this map, there's another route for water only that is proposed to be extended along Rockfield Road, essentially from Goldendale west all the way to 41, under 41, to what would be the north east corner of the northeast corridor as shown on this graphic. So as we discuss the utility routes, most of the graphics are going to be pertaining to the Freistadt district with the different alternatives. But keep in mind, there is the one proposal for water to be extended along Rockfield Road. And that's part of the package, if you will. We discussed and showed some graphics using DNR wetland information to show how those two alternatives might lay out relative to environmental features in the Freistadt district. And since then, we've obtained some actual wetland delineation information from Richfield's consultant for the IGA. Cedar Corporation did an extensive on-site wetland investigation throughout the Freistadt district and also along Rockfield Road to identify wetland boundaries. And as I mentioned earlier this evening, quite surprising how much more wetland is delineated and out there compared to the more generalized information available on the DNR wetland maps on their website. Not necessarily surprising, frankly, because there is a navigable waterway running through the site, but some of the areas, there's just little small areas, isolated wetlands scattered throughout the site, which sort of makes it difficult for a route selection if you're going to combine that with road right-of-way anywhere between 80 to 120 feet wide without hitting a wetland area.
Are
Yes.
these man-made wetlands included in here, or are these natural wetlands? Because I understand the rules are different.
Rules are different. To my knowledge, these are all of the natural wetlands. While there may be some that would qualify as man-made or artificial, there would be another higher level of analysis that would be required for each of those. So it may be that at some point associated with development, whether it's the utility extension or future development after that, where somebody needs to identify and analyze those wetlands for their status as natural or artificial. But at this point, they're wetlands to be dealt with. And one of the concepts leading the charge on the route determination was effectively we need to avoid wetland and other environmental impacts to the extent possible. And so the next graphic shows the refinement of the recommended routes recommended by staff route through the Freistadt district for both water and sewer using the red boundary. The blue that's on there is the area within which the wetlands were delineated. So you can sort of ignore that blue line. It's not, doesn't pertain to the utility extension route at all. The red line is the solid red line is the route recommended by staff. And if you compare that to the original plan, it's basically a combination of the two. It's sort of effectively right down the middle in some ways of the original routes that were being analyzed. And they're to be located in an area that would, in an orientation and in a location to avoid environmental impacts to the extent possible. On this graphic, we're showing the ultimate potential right-of-way, assuming that the route would include a combination of future road right-of-way as well as the utility area that varies between 100 and 120 feet in width, centered on that red line. Now, the thought is that as we get into negotiations with the property owners, that the location may change, but the idea is that we're going to try and locate the route and the right-of-way to be acquired associated with it on as few of property owners' land as possible, so we narrow the number of owners to negotiate with. And that may be possible by slightly moving the red line a little bit further, east of a section line or a little bit further north of what's shown here. Those refinements will be worked out in the course of the engineering planning and also the property acquisition negotiations. So why are we here this evening? The state statutes provide that one of the duties of the Plan Commission, as directed by the municipal board, in this case, the village board, to consider and report on any acquisition for future utilities or public streets. And the village attorney has advised that the plan commission take a formal action to pass along their recommendation for the utility route to the village board to allow them to initiate the process of negotiating with property owners and having detailed engineering plans prepared. All of which would be done by or under the auspices of the Village of Richfield and paid for by them as part of the IGA. So with that said, staff is essentially asking the Plan Commission to recommend approval of the staff recommended utility routes as shown on this graphic dated June 12th, 2023. That was included in the larger plan sheet that was on the dais for you this evening. That route through the Freistadt district and the Rockfield Road extension of water. Yes.
Okay. Else?
No. Just to answer any questions you have.
Commission members, do we know what we're,
To throw it on the floor, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of this route as laid forward in our material tonight to the village board.
have a motion, is there a second? A motion and a second. Tarantino. Discussion.
This just brings it forward so that they can start negotiations on.
Right. It is here's the best route we'd like to do. Go out and acquire the land to do this. Village of Germantown is not paying for any of the land. Richfield is paying for it.
Well, no,
Half of it.
any right of way that's being acquired, Germantown is responsible for 50% of the cost. If this, again, the intention is to acquire right of way so that the utilities can be installed initially and eventually roads can be constructed in the same corridor, same route, if you will, as the utilities. The utilities themselves require basically a gravel road over the top so that it can be maintained. There's a spacing of, I forget how many feet it is between manholes that ultimately need to be maintained. So there is, whether it's an easement of, 40 feet in width or a road right of way, in this case, ultimately either 100 or 120 feet. That's what we're looking at acquiring going forward. Now, when you look at this graphic, clearly the frontage road parallel to 41, that portion dropping down from the railroad south, it's shown there as a maximum of 120 feet of right of way. The original thought was that would continue further south and eventually one day travel across the DJ Frank property that lies between 41 and the large wetland area in the middle of the district. You can see on the aerial photograph the various buildings and impervious surfaces associated with the DJ Frank operation. That was intended to be, or is intended to be, sort of the backbone, if you will, of the frontage road, so that when it eventually is constructed south to Freistadt Road, it could handle in a continuous flow of traffic, truck traffic coming out of the Germantown Industrial Park, where it could go west through the Goldendale Road intersection, along Freistadt Road, and then turn onto the new frontage road and head north parallel to 41, ideally in a way where it wouldn't have to stop until it got to Holy Hill Road. So it would be essentially like a 4-lane, ultimately could be a 4-lane divided boulevard, probably constructed as simply a 2-lane boulevard concept with a bike path in the interim, or a multi-use path or some other path consistent with the the outdoor recreation plan and the other graphics that we have, the vision plan that showed the recreational trails through the area.
Commissioners?
Is that ultimately the path that that was all supposed to follow or proposed to follow? Like, as far as the recreational trails, or is that red line what that's all gonna? mirror?
Well, it deviates from what's presented in even our vision plan. If I, were to skip back to what we were talking about under the previous, what you don't see there is a trail running through the Freistadt district. I don't know if that was intentional as part of the outdoor recreation planning effort, but it would seem reasonable that as we move forward, that there should be some sort of linkage and connection of the trails through that area as well. And so I think the thought is that moving forward, whatever right-of-way is acquired through the Freistadt district for the utility extension, that it be sufficient to also accommodate not just future road, but also recreational trail or at least sidewalk.
And is it preferred to be straight cuts like this, or would a sweeping curving?
It doesn't matter from the standpoint of the utilities themselves. It can be 90-degree angles. I mean, this is a sort of a generalized representation. But yes, there's really no necessarily impact associated with the utilities as far as the angles of the.
Yeah,
Right.
what's going through my head is I'm thinking of the master plan of, is there a better road system than down, over and down to get better lots? That's what I'm.
Well, one of the considerations that is reflected here is we've had discussions, preliminary discussions with the property owners. And here's a graphic that shows the various property owners.
Yes.
And I don't have, but I should, I guess, superimpose that recommended route through here. Again, what we're trying to do is limit the number of property owners to deal with in terms of negotiating for right-of-way. And when we look at this proposed recommended route, we're really dealing in large measure with the Freistadt Corp, highlighted by the yellow, and the Elfie Mulk property highlighted in the green. When you look at that route. Now, in our discussions with those owners, one of the things that they're saying to us, which makes sense and I think is reasonable, we already are impacted significantly by wetlands throughout our properties. And you are telling us you'd like our area, the Freistadt district, to develop into this mixed-use commercial along 41 and a business park in the internal parts. In order for our properties to be developable, we really would prefer not to have roads running through it this way and that way and cutting it all up into, unusable or very small components.
Yep.
So the thought is, let's try and lay out the road right of way for the utilities that ultimately would result in, dividing those property owners affected by the route in a manner that doesn't create small, little unusable properties, and which not only benefits them, but us as well, since right now, the vision is for this area to be some sort of a business park, right, in the interior part. That may change as we go through the master plan process for the Freistadt district. And in light of, one of the things we're seeing is the amount of wetland area. And we still need an outcome on the railroad crossing application that has yet to be made. So there's a lot of factors that play into ultimately whether or not the Freistadt district is going to develop with the type and extent of uses that were contemplated even under our vision plan. That will hopefully be fleshed out as part of our master plan for the Freistadt district. And again, that's why the RFP that's out there is sort of a combination of do us a plan for the Holy Hill Gateway and the Freistadt districts, either together or two separate plans, but to develop them concurrently so that we can get out ahead of, what we've experienced, just this evening. Property owners and developers asking questions, making proposals. Again, what we're looking for is a plan commission recommendation to the village board concerning the route.
We have a motion to approve. Do you make the motion?
I made the motion.
Second the motion to approve as presented. Any further discussion? Personally, I can see a variety of ways to go, working with the wetlands so that there's opportunities here to get lots in here.
Yeah, and we went through a lot of iterations. And of course, we're still subject to negotiations with the property owners as well. The big question mark is right in the middle. It's the DJ Frank property. And they made it clear to us that they want to continue operating as they have been and continue for as long as they can. And frankly, we approached the utility route with that in mind.
Okay. Any further comment? Do you have enough input from us? We need to take an action on that. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Does everybody remember the motion? To approve as presented,
Recommend.
as recommended, recommend as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That will bring us to item F, University of Wisconsin Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture 2023-24 Senior Capstone Project Request for Proposal, Community Design and Planning Services, Discussion and Action. Director Etzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you are aware, having reviewed the staff report, we have an opportunity here. It's an opportunity that is out there seemingly every year and has been for quite a number of years, where the village can apply for, with a fairly straightforward application, for planning and design services from students at the UW-Madison Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture. I don't know, does UWM, I don't think they have the same type of project.
We did a variety of different things. We didn't have a landscape architecture program.
Right.
Madison has that. UWM has the architect program. So we were doing municipal planning. We would be doing what we hired Gray Wolf or Grafe to do.
Yeah, exactly. So the timing is right. I thought it'd be worth discussing with the Plan Commission. Applications are due in August. If we talk through this tonight and we want to pursue it, we could probably flesh out a couple of things before, if we do have a special meeting in a couple of weeks, to lock in on something. And frankly, we could make application that has 2 or 3 or multiple proposals.
So it is a student doing a senior project.
Yes.
Okay.
It lasts the entire 2-semester school year. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at online the efforts that have been done in the past. They are impressive, frankly. And so, it sort of begs the question, and the cost is relatively low. We'd have to pay, traveling costs and other things associated with that. But there's no fee for the service.
Right.
It's part of their project. And, given how tight things are budget wise, it kind of makes some sense for us to pursue something like this. Now, would it be worth throwing a Holy Hill Gateway master plan at them or a Village Center master plan at them? I don't know. What do you think?
If we had a master, recognizing this is for landscape architects, not planners. They need something to work on. So they need some type of a plan to start with to then say, here's how I would landscape it. and here's some suggestions I'd make how to change it. I think they need a starting point.
Frankly, from reading a handful of the projects that I did, I mean, they were starting from scratch with some of these, yeah. And particularly like, for example, the one that's sort of close to home for me was the Campbellsport downtown plan. That was a start from scratch project for a small community of about, I don't know, 5,000
That's
people.
redoing the landscaping on their main.
It's also identifying future land uses.
As a, hey, I would do this. If you've got a talented student who thinks that way, hey, this could be a good use here.
Yes, I mean, certainly there would be a lot of handholding that would be required through this process. And we do have a number, we arguably where our plan is to do a master plan for all of the 32 neighborhoods, districts, and corridors. So can we find one that we'd like to have done, right away, that isn't as critical as the village center, if we're afraid to, do the village center in that way, which I would be. But maybe the Lannon Road county line area, the district down there. We have Country Air north of Mequon Road, that district. Because that area is been added to the sewer service area. I mean, there's some other things that are in our implementation schedule of the plan that we could go through and throw at them and throw out there and see what might stick.
So I think the comments that I heard earlier tonight led me in a different direction, that we had to supervise these people with a iron fist. No, these are students that need to explore their creativity. So which way are we going? Let them explore, or we control and direct them with an iron
Well,
fist?
certainly we would have to establish the parameters and lay down, what we want for them. We don't want you to just, design materials, architecture, landscaping. We want to work and develop a land use plan as well. And guide them with regard to types, density, that sort of thing.
To a point, that's true of a professional.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if there are other organizations that are more local, we're willing to accept a similar scenario from them? I heard discussions of, there's a company right here that does this too. Why can't we use them?
Yeah, I heard the comment, but I wasn't sure what that meant. I wrote some notes down, so I'll.
So if you've got a company that, versus Rebecca, but we can talk to them too. Universe City.
And what is that? What is that?
If they have a program like this and they want to bring students to,
We have to apply by 2026 cohort, Tuesday, August 1st.
we can look into that too.
Yeah, we can pursue that too, if that's what you'd like us to look into. I guess my thought at this point is there a particular, whether it be a master plan or some other design related thing? One of the things we had talked about, what we need to do is develop some design details for buffering and landscaping around the perimeter of, for example, the Holy Hill District. Could that be a separate item, a separate project, like a component of what might be a master plan that we delegate to some project like this?
If, from my perspective, if we are trying to get the best bang for our buck, we are emphasizing two areas. This one, Holy Hill and Freistadt developments, and the town center. Those are the ones we said we need master plans for.
Right.
So if we talk to these people and say, hey, we got some people can work on this or some people can work on this, let's see what they want to talk about. And then we bring them to not one of these meetings, but some other meeting where we can, okay, in this area, we're looking for this, in this area, we're looking for this, and here's some parameters. Give them a little more guidelines as to what we'd be looking for so that they could focus
Yeah.
their concepts towards more of what we're looking for.
I don't know, but I'm wondering if the timing would work out where we could make application for this process, include the Holy Hill and or Freistadt district, and see what we get back RFP wise. And maybe we decide, let's do a 180. We'll halt on the RFP for the paid consultants for the Holy Hill, Freistadt. We throw one of these projects at the students, Freistadt or Holy Hill Gateway, and then we take the funds that we have now and throw that at the village center.
My concern about that approach is one of the things I'm looking for is the expertise. Is this a viable solution?
Yeah, okay.
And with a student, I'm not getting viability. With Grafe or whoever,
Yeah.
I felt I was going to get a report that told me whether this was viable or not.
Right.
So that would be one.
Yeah, and that's the downside of any master plan that we want to put together. I mean, short of picking, maybe we pick all of the neighborhoods in the central part of the village and have them work up a plan for the infill sites in those districts. It's a little, it's not too flashy, and if I were a grad student, I probably wouldn't want to do it, but it would be something safer, it would be kind of a project with training wheels that would get an effort done that needs to be done. It just wouldn't be a high priority item for us necessarily. One of the areas I'm thinking about is the Kinderberg Park neighborhood and the large undeveloped tract at the northeast of Donjas Bay and Pilgrim.
Park.
With the park, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a relatively small size project, but maybe something we would feel comfortable cutting a student loose on to do for us.
When it says it's, that they would be guided by an advisory group from the host community, would that be us? Or is that
At
like,
this point, I would assume yes.
Or a subcommittee.
and then supervised by faculty from Madison?
Or a subcommittee of this group that could meet with them.
Yeah, we can discuss that.
Yeah, my only concern with it not being broad enough is, and too simplistic is that in their requirements for consideration, they indicate student projects must be broad enough in scope to demonstrate a diversity of design and planning skills at site and community scales. So my concern is if we're going to make this too simplistic, we're not going to be selected to participate. So.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think the two areas that we are focusing on would be right for them. Freistadt, Holy Hill, and Town Center. I think those would be two good projects that give them enough diversity, enough opportunity, and we can give them a lot of guidance on there.
Okay, so I guess I would take away from what we've said so far is we should pursue the opportunity. My question is which project projects should we include in our application?
I would do those two areas, master planning of those two areas.
Knowing that we already have out an RFP for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the RFP is getting me the analytics of, is this viable? And then we can roll them into, hey, here's somebody else to collaborate with on your concept.
Boy, would you want to do that? Would you want to be a paid consultant being told to collaborate with a college student?
There's a free intern for you.
I'm just throwing that out there for consideration.
Maybe they don't have to work together. Maybe it's just another concept we have. We got the
Okay.
paid intern, we got the paid people doing a master plan, and we got another group doing a bunch of, I don't know how many students are gonna be doing this. We can get 6 different students doing 6 different verticals.
Actually, it appears that there's one student assigned to a project. So it's not like there's a group, it's not a group project per se, which I kind of hope that it would have been. So you, who gets the good, who gets the A team, right? And
Or do you break it into, take the town center. Do you break that into quadrants?
no, that's,
And
that's,
somebody do this section, somebody does this section, somebody does this section. You do that up there. Somebody does this area, somebody does that area, somebody does the next area.
okay.
What can you create of this? And recognize that there's another planner working next to you. Maybe that's part of hey, how are you guys linking together?
Okay, so kind of create a very unique project with that. All right,
How big do they want this to be? Do you want to do just a 50-acre project? Do you want to do a 250 acre? Want to do an entire town center, or do you want to do a portion of a town center? How much do they want to, how big do these projects need to be?
I mean, some of the projects I looked at, they were quite extensive in area.
Well, it says they have 3 scales. The site scale is 2 to 3 city blocks, the neighborhood community scale is 6 to 20 blocks, and the regional scale is about the scale of a city to a county.
Right, so they're,
Center.
I mean, the village center would provide all of that. Could address the land use and the accessibility and design from a more regional, community scale down to individual sites.
This isn't costing us a pretty penny, where the consultants are costing us a pretty penny. So maybe you let somebody do this other stuff low cost, and then we take good ideas out of there and apply it to the final solution that we end up going with. Nothing saying that we have to take these ideas.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe because the projects would be going on concurrently, the Holy Hill Freistadt master plan essentially is going to track with the same schedule, a fall and a spring semester. And we try and get the village center project as part of this opportunity. And we take what we can out of it. And if it's, if it's a really good effort, we run with it. If it's not, we pick the meat off the bones and we take it and we go to the next step and combine that with the connectivity plan we already have, the corp information, and we go back to a paid consultant to package it all together and, fine tune it all as part of a next year's summer, fall project. I mean, it's a thought. At this point, I just don't know what we're going to have available for us budget-wise, going forward. May not be anything. So I think we should, I think we should try and get something, apply for something on this. All right, I'll work something up and bring it back to our next meeting. If we meet again before August 11th.
Okay. Everybody's available except me right now.
Yep.
And I'll try and do virtual if I have to.
All right, thank you.
All right. And that takes us to announcements. Any announcements?
We might be having a special meeting in a couple weeks.
There's your announcement. You've been told. All right, then I will adjourn the meeting at 8:46. Thank you very much. Now, if your microphones, please. Which one is that?
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Donges Bay and Fond du Lac, nothing.
Those are in.